I'm going to go over how to create a species mod for Stellaris. Might be confusing, so you might have to watch this video a couple of times. But I'm just going to give you the basics, and then I'll show you how to do it, and then what stuff you will need afterwards. So from the start, you can go Stellaris, load up your loader, click on upload, go to create a mod, and then name your species mod to whatever. For example, I put template, for example, template, put your version 1.0 or whatever you think you're at, and then go ahead and create mod. The mod directory will be right here. Your documents, Paradox, Interactive, Stellaris, and then the mod. This will be your local where you keep everything. If you upload it to Steam and Paradox, luckily you'll have a way to mess with your files later on in case you accidentally deleted yours or moved to different computers and whatnot and didn't transfer it. So it's really key. If you want to create something, you first have to create on the Paradox launcher. Once you create it, you get a template with you'll get the folder name of your species and then a mod file that has your species name. They're going to be tied to each other. Don't change them. Don't mess with these because they're linked to your folder specifically. So my Wolfian stuff, if I were to use my human one and just rename it, it won't work for this. It'll automatically know that, hey, something's not right with Wolfian. Even if I were to change the descriptor mod, it will still say the same thing. So it already knows it's already linked. Once you link it to online with either with Steam or Paradox, it just knows. So when you create your folder, you're just going to see like emptiness with the descriptor. I'm going to have this template with you so you could drag and copy and paste and copy folders to your new species mod, and then you're just going to kind of reverse engineer your way out. So that way it will be yours original. However, you can change the thumbnail too. It's just 512 by 512. I'm going to leave it there so you can edit it afterwards. First thing to go off of is localization. It's really quick and short. You will have a name list. You can name it whatever you want right here or however. Doesn't matter. This is really not really important. Just name the variables right here to whatever your species is. It has your sounds and everything else, extra stuff that's really, it doesn't break your game. So you could change that right here in localization. And then we're going to go ahead and go to common. Species names, it's not really important. You could delete it. I'm going to get to that later. Species classes, this is where you have your category. So for example, I'm going to start Stellaris. When you open up to species classes and you open this, I prefer you guys to have a Notepad++. It just makes everything a lot easier. Is you have your main variable. This right here is unique. It needs to be very unique with Stellaris. Can't be the same as Stellaris of any of their variables. It needs to be unique. I'll show you why. So when you create your mod, you're testing around. I'll show you that too. For human, for example, I'm just going to do a human basis off of Wolfian. You have two images right here that shows this category where it says appearance. I just call it categories. You have human. That's human. Or this right here. That's the human category. Human is this. This is human variable. One down below, human underscore 01. That one's this one. And I'll show you how that is. I made two files, human animation, human static for you. So if you ever choose to go whatever route you can, go ahead. These are the graphical natures of, you could change it. All this pretty much. Moving pop confirmation. Key is creating your own variable. So if I wanted to make taco people, I would name it like taco or something. And however, these don't have to be the same as human. You could use any unique variables you want. It's up to you. I prefer everything else, you want to put lowercase. If you notice, like everything else has pretty much lowercase, other than certain things have like capitalized. Keep everything the same. It's pretty self-explanatory what randomize is and spawn enabled if you've been playing. I'm not going to go over those. So you got species class. Actually, I'm going to keep that open. It's very important. And then you have your graphics. This is where you're going to store all your images. It's very simple. Models will have all your images, as portraits will have another portraits folder. And then these will store all your information of where the images are. So Stellaris is going to run up. It's going to run up this little text file, and then it's going to show where the files are. For example, like I showed models, portraits, human 1, human 1. This is where this is going to be. So if I were to go models, portraits, human 1, here's all my human 1 pictures. I'm going to go ahead and open these for animations purposes. I made it really like simple and clean. If you notice 1 through 10, it says 80. So they're admirals that I have. 1 to 10, 80. It's admirals. There's a typo with that one. It doesn't matter. Delete that one. I just double check, see if it's correct. But I'm just going to leave it right now for sake of editing and uploading. So if you want to have static, my human 2 folder already has it preset. So if you were to, I'll show that in a second. I'm going to show the animation side of it. So you just have to have files of images. These files are just DDS, but they're not any type of DDS. You can use PaintNet to convert your images to DDS, and it really doesn't matter what sizing of dimensions they are. You could change the dimensions, and then Stellaris will try to do his best to populate them in a sense. For example, if I were to go higher or lower, it might change the character's scaling as well. So it could be smaller, it could be bigger, it could be enlarged if you go lower resolution. You don't necessarily need to change it if you like where my images is and how it scales on here. If you like where it goes like this, then you can use my static or animation and it'll just put them like this, just fine. So there's only 3 files you really have to like pay attention to get a mesh and an animation working. What a mesh is if I were to load up Blender, this right here is my mesh. This A1.002, this little blank sheet of paper is my mesh. This right here is my animation, my anim file. Right now this is like nothing. If I were to go like this, there's like literally nothing because I deleted it. But if I were to reload it, my character will do some type of animation. I'll get to it how to do animations later time, but that's the basics. Is you have your mesh file, and then you have your animation, which this is my animation files, and these two are my mesh. Simple and clean. I split them from female to male. They have two different meshes. So now we look at human 1 portrait and their animations and the entities. All these three are how to create animations. Same with static. I'm just going to go the static route of DDS. I'm not going to go anywhere else with PNG and all that. Just in case you do decide to go animation, it's just easy flip and switch. So for animation side, you have portraits. Like I was talking about, how you have the PDX mesh. This right here is the PDX mesh, and this is the animation. But you also have to save it as a mesh file, PDX mesh, and you also have to save it as a PDX animation file. So my mesh variable, I call this variable, this has to match pretty much almost like everything that's tied to this mesh. The mesh is like the image, and then this is the file where I store my image, my mesh file. These are the idle 1, 2, and sad 2. You could change them to different animations. I just have one set of animations. This is a variable too. When it says type, this is a variable. Same with here. It's like identical. The only thing that's different is one says female, one says male. So if you notice, they're all using the same animations from the female side and the male side. So the only thing you're going to have to change is right here, the file, and your mesh variable. You keep it, if you want to keep it how I did with like male and female, if you're making your species, just name this. You just gotta rechange this. Make sure you rechange all your files too. So it's not that too difficult to change, reverse engineer. But that's where the mesh and the animations tie to, and then I'll go through the animation side. This is where you store your animation. This is your animation file, and then the animation name. You can keep everything right here tied. Just change human 1. That's all you have to do. If you notice, later on when you look at human 2, there's going to be 2 sets of animations. And I'll show you that in a bit. But this is where you store your animation. Simple. If you want to create more, you can just copy this and then add more downwards. As long as it has the bracket, you're good. You just need the name, the file location. This is the variable that's going to globalize with the not the portraits, but the human 1 portrait graphics right here. So, or my bad, the animation's right here. So for females, this should be identical to the females ones down here, which they are. So that's how you tie the animations to the portrait. And then the entities. Now we're tying entities. Now, what are entities? Right here. If you notice right here, you have portrait, human 101 entity. If I were to go to, it's going to be confusing now. Now, these are the graphics. This is the human 1 portrait text. If you remember where this is, we have to go back to graphics, portraits, portraits. Now I'm looking at this one, this text file, human 1 portraits. Now, reason why I go back to human 1 portraits, where I showed you where you store all the images, this is where entity 1 is. and this is where your new variable of male. And this is how you slide into humans. For example, the phenotype. The phenotype 1, 2, 3, and 4 is what I have. I deleted 2, so there's only 4 for male and 4 for females. You have 1, 3, 4, and 5. And these are all, I categorize them very simple. You have ruler, you have admirals, you have generals, you have the scientists, images, and then you go to the females. Same thing, repeat. So this is the top half of it. I'll talk about how the portrait groups work after. So obviously these are the 10 files. So the 10 files are color variants. When you add an additional file, it's going to be a color variant. If you were to change over here the selectors and everything, then you're going to add hairstyles and clothing. But that's going to be a whole different story. We're not going to go into that. We're just going to go simple, where if you were to create more of these variables and just have one picture, then that will be just a base model of that phenotype. So you can have multiple phenotypes for if you just want to make one character, then same character, different colors, then you could have it as one phenotype, maybe change clothes or color and all that. I just have it simple as color will change the character for that phenotype. And that works out for me. Simple is cleaner to do for animation's sake in Blender. And it's just like simple work. That's how you pretty much get into imaging. If you notice, instead of PNG, like I said, I use DDS. I'll get to that in a bit. So you want to get your files, whatever images, however you want to idealize. If you want everyone to be everyone, you know, the odds of maybe have 50 pictures, you could just use one phenotype and then 50 images if you wanted to. As long as they, like, you might have to move the images up and down, left, right a little bit just to get it the eye point. But if you also create another phenotype like this, human 3, I could go to the entities. I'm going to move it over here. This entities from the animation side of it is tied to this mesh variable, which is tied to the portrait mesh file. For males, this one. So it's tied to this variable right here. So like it's kind of confusing at first, but I could change this to any mesh variable and add a new PDX mesh to it. And that way I could get maybe a different side angle for the next phenotype, or maybe I messed up where the eyes are somewhere else or whatnot. You could add a new mesh file, create your mesh, change it, and then create new animation for it as well if you use a different phenotype. If you want to have different animation, different style of drawings and stuff, maybe you want a different phenotype. I separate them for my sake, so it's easier to make like the rulers, the admirals, generals, and scientists. You don't have to do this. It's however you want. Now we got through all those. That's pretty much how they link up, how to reverse engineer. Just whatever your species name is, you just rename. Keep everything the same if you want, just change the human one to whatever your species name is. Do that for all these. You don't have to do all 1 to 10 and change name to it. You can maybe just, you know, you see how one phenotype is for females, you like how these appear, so maybe delete all of these, like 2 to 10 or whatnot, for your new one. Just rename this to whatever AD and make sure it just matches these files. Everything matches. You don't open these, edit these, or whatnot. If you want the same style as this for this animation, like if you like how it moves up and down, where the eye mark is somewhere like right here, you could use this image. You could use this image as a template to create your own images and keep it where the eye marks are. And if your images are kind of like far, you could just move them, your image, to the eye level and save it into the DDS file, and then you're good to go. I'll get into more of the DDS and how you save things. It's really self-explanatory of how portraits are. You just need to just tinker those bits, and then you have it. You have your image as animation if you want to use that type of animation files. And then now if you just want it static, you like where my portraits are placed and whatnot, you can just open up Human 2. You like how it's static, you don't care about that, just you like how it is. You can change the images to whatever you want, use DDS. Just be easier in case you do want to switch it to animations, just like a flip of a switch. Because right now I have 2 animation files for female and male. It's called see, oops, not in here. Oh, I added it. Will be called. Just make sure I have everything correct for the template for you guys. That's really it of creating a species. I'm just going to go over the next part so you don't get confused of why it's not popping up. Under portraits, this just needs to be the same. All you have to do is just change this part to whatever your species names, rename all these. It's easy with Control F. You can replace whatever you want to change. Like for example, I just want to change Human 1 to whatever my species name is, and then use this, replace it to my species. And you can replace all of it and it'll just replace it all. I named it Human 1, so once you replace this, it'll replace all this Human 1s. It'll replace this to whatever naming scheme you have. It just becomes really easy for the naming sense. Now we're going to go down to part 2. So portrait groups. What is portrait groups? You notice how this one says human, right? Human relates to the models portraits. Oh, oops. The common folder, the classes, and the human species. If you notice humans right here, that's human. This needs to be identical of whatever you're naming for like your naming sense. So once you get all of this part done, this is when you want to start naming your species. This is just for the game to know like where your species name is and whatnot. What I mean is, this is human variable, and this is human underscore 01. So I have to, if I'm using human, I can name it like whatever I want, human 55, whatever. Long as it matches right here under the portraits and the human class right here, you're set. Just needs to be identical. Don't worry about that. This will set your portraits groups up perfectly. And like I said, once you use like Notepad 1, Notepad++, and you replace Human 1 to your species names, these will automatically will be changed. Human 1s, 01, 03, 04, 05. All of them. And they're already categorized so that this will only spawn for scientists, generals, admirals, rulers, and whatnot. So it's, if you like that how the scheme is, then you really don't have to change anything right here with the variables. But I'm gonna go over them. So that if you notice, it said ruler or gender, female. So this is female variables of what you could, your country could run through. So when you load up the game setup, you're gonna see these four variables of the phenotypes. These four are these ones. For loading up, you could choose your character. Now, if it's male or whatever, you got these four also. So if I go male, I got these four. And then now we're going to add these species into the game. So here's the portraits. Here's the same, female, male. We're going to add it to pop reasons. Now you got these pops that you add. So like if they're working, like if you are in the planet and you look at like your colony and you see like miners or whatever they are, they're going to be like different random images of these variables. If you just want certain ones, you could change these, doesn't matter. Now if I want them to be scientists, generals, admirals, governors, leader class equals scientist, I have it to that variable 05, and then now this is only one's going to be scientists. Same thing with male, scientist. And it goes go forth, general. Same thing, 04. Admirals, 03. Now if it's not scientist, general, admiral, then it must be a leader, right? Here's 01. Same thing, 01. So, and then you have rulers. Because you know there's rulers and leaders, but that's how they're inputted. It's not that hard. If you like how the system is, then you really just changing the species names and it'll automatically just work. The only difference is now is the DDS file, which I'll get to that after I get to number 2. Since that was human 1, I'll show you human 2. Human 2 is literally the same. See the naming scheme? Just from 1 to 2. Once I renamed everything from human 1 to 2, it works. Just like that. The only difference is to make it work, you have to change right here. Because now that human 01 needs to match your common folder classes 201 or whatever you want to name it. It doesn't matter. You could name this naming scheme however you want. It's just examples. And the reason why differences of why this one's moving and this one isn't is really simple. So templates, models, portraits. Human 2, there's always these 3 files. You have your graphics, your assets, and your second assets. This is your entities, or whatever, and you have your animations. So your animations will hold your animations files. Like previously, now there's 2 extra ones. I added a static one, female, and a male static. So it's just easier to see. Same thing, you just create, have the same file name, and then you create a variable name. You want to keep something with this underscore animation always. You can change everything else, it doesn't matter. But this needs to be on there. It just gets buggy without it. So make sure that is correct, and then go to your portraits. If you notice the difference between Human 2 portrait graphics and Human 1 portraits graphics, they're using the female idle animation 1, and this one's just using the F static. That's it. M static. From right here that I added. As long as that file's in that directory, you know, you just create a variable for it and make sure it matches your PDX mesh, because it just needs to match this. So your PDX mesh connects everything together. Just think of it as like your wireframe of your body, right? That's your variable. That's where your file is. And then these are your types. This is your variable of where your asset file is, your animations. As long as this variable matches right here, boom, you're good to go. So really it's just naming scheme. I recommend if you I recommend to use my animations or my mesh. I don't care if you use the animations or if you want to change it, edit it, it doesn't matter. I recommend using the mesh and the static animation if you just want it static, like Human 2 is, and then just add in your pictures. And to add pictures as DDS, it's really comes down to using like PaintNet. You could use PaintNet. You could like have your file and then you just save it as a DDS file. PaintNet, by the way, is free. Here's Direct Draw, DDS. And then, for example, you know, whatever, you just go to your directory and save it. But the difference is here, the settings. You want it BC3, linear DXT5, and then it will be able to run. If you use a different type, it might work, or it might take more sizing, but it might make it like 1 megabyte, but it's the same quality. So there's no point to go even further. I prefer using BC3 linear DXT5, and then the file size will be small, and it's the same quality. Don't have to worry about the compression. Right now it's saying 468 for this 800 by 600. It's going to be a lot less, like 300 or something with the image if you're using the same image file. If you just want to have it simple base and think that my image, how it looks like this size and round and whatnot, then I recommend just open one of these in Paint or Photoshop and then using it as a template, the sizing. So you could use 376 by 648, and then if you put your image where it is, then it will show right here. Just know that if you're using Photoshop, you're going to have to use the latest Photoshop, and then you will have to download the NVIDIA DDS tool exporter program. So if I were to go to the latest one by Photoshop, I already have NVIDIA's plugin installed for Photoshop. But what it does is, I'll have a Word document or a Google document out that will have like the links and stuff, so you could download Notepad, Blender, and where to add the preferences, for example, to start seeing where this PDX materials are. If you wanted to edit this and whatnot, I'll go through a quick little guide on Blender. But on Photoshop, you just open your files, right? Now, if I wanted to get this one to work, if I wanted to save this file, I'll just save it as a copy, go to DDS, and then find where human 2 is, wherever your template is, where your species is. You know, click on the name. Like for example, I would change him, save as, and then now I have to change my BC to 3. Doesn't matter what filter type you use. You know, you want the highest quality you could get. And then the main thing you really need to add for it is just this. Sometimes you might get lines and stuff, but if you check this box for pre-multiplied alpha, it does its job. You don't really need this. If you notice, with DDS files, the little pixels anyways gets removed anyways, so you don't have to be accurate. The scaling is just going to show probably up to like his chest anyways. It's not going to get down below. I have extra room, so if I animate, it just looks smoother. You can click on these buttons, but obviously we're not checking or messing with it, so it's not going to do anything. So when you save your file to that spot. Let's see. Added that person for Admiral. There he is. Right here. And then he's already in. The only one that doesn't get changed, well, won't update to show, is the first one. The female right here. That one's based, that one's stored into the game by loading up, so you have to exit out of the game just to see this one get changed. But the other ones, if you were to save as to anything, like how I did right here, if I wanted this file again, or this one, and whatnot, it's just simple, easy as you go. Find where your template is and boom, add it. You know, obviously you're going to rename your species names and whatnot. I mean, if you don't, that way if someone were to download your mod, it doesn't collide with my mod because we're not using the same variables. But I mean, it's up to you. I'm not going to complain. And that's really it. If there's anything I missed or whatnot, you guys could always send me a message or something, especially on like Reddit or something like that, or YouTube comments. Blender though, I'll go quickly over it. Once you download Blender, there's a lot of things you have to check for. Just go to Edit, Preferences, and then I have an image saved on the Google Drives that you guys should check down on the comments. That way you'll see like all the ones I installed, but so far this is like all the ones right here I installed. The only ones that you have to manually install is the ILPDX mesh. I'll leave a link of how to install it. Just gonna make this quick. Once you get all this installed, then you could actually like load my mesh up, and then you could see how it looks. Like for example, if I were to load my mesh from, let's see, from human 1, the male one, it's going to look something like this, but you probably won't see this image. So once you, oh, got to, hold on. Go click a new one, save. So when you start Blender, it's going to look something like this. You just delete all these, doesn't matter. And then you'll start seeing like your PDX tools. You can actually load any mesh on Stellaris, like of the mail, and then it's going to look like this. If you use your third button, the scrolling button, you don't scroll, but you just press down on it. You can change your angle where you're looking at. If you hold shift and that, you could move up and down, right? And then if you scroll back and forth, you could go like this. If you press numpad 1, you could get it flat. And this is what it looks like as a mesh. It looks like a clean sheet. It doesn't have to have the image on here. The image is right here in material properties. See that M1 image is just not popping up anymore? You can still add your image file by using this. Just hit this little minus thing. That way you can change the image. If it's not popping up, you can just add your own image and see how it looks. And then you can slowly start changing it. Like you could move your image up and down and whatnot on your Photoshop or whatnot and get it customized where it lands perfectly right here. Or you could move the mesh however you want, but ideally it might be easier just to manually move it with Photoshop. It's just to be easier for you guys. And then this is your animation file. If I were to switch to pose and click on one of these, press A, it should show me my, oh, I haven't loaded my animation. So you could click on up here, load up your animation. For example, for human 1, be something, or reload. So the animation will automatically recenter where you have it. And here's the meshes and animations files. All these are twisting it. You see how it's moving. If you were to change it, I'll also have a Blender file where you could actually open. Like, I'll give you human 1 male and human 1 female. It's the same identical one for human 2. So when you open it, it might not show your image since it's my file. It has, stored somewhere else for you guys. But you can also load one of my images from it. For example, your human 2, you can easily load up like a male and then as a DDX. That way you could test it, see where the animation blinks or whatever if you want to. So just remember, this is your mesh, this is your animation. For your animation to save, make sure it's in object mode and then hit save animation and save it to like whatever name you want it. Mesh, same thing, just keep it on object, you don't want to get any errors, and then save it, that mesh. Make sure you know that that mesh and that animation are linked together, and then you just have to watch this guide and add them. But the reason why I'm showing you this is because now you could go to weight paint. If you notice, other than this green dot, I don't know why it's there, but if you were to click on your animations, use your shift, you could like move around, make sure you use numpad number 1, get it centered, and all you have to do is just go to pose in this animation right here. All these are moving, correct? When I move that, you're gonna have this file, so it's automatically gonna have this animations. You could, let's say if you don't like the eye blinking, it's like on 52, it blinks, right? It's doing something weird. So if I were to click on here on any of these objects, it'll start showing where these animations are. If you don't like it, you could delete 52 right here. Oh, it's not. Should have deleted, but I were to delete 52 again. There it goes. Now it shouldn't. Now the eyes are right there. They're not moving. So you can customize if you want to use this animation. You can set however you want. Just know if you want how they move, it's really simple. Just know that right here, all these files, if I press A, then I'm copying all of these, right? Let's say I like this animation where it's moving this way. All I do is press I, and then I can just set my location, rotations, and scale. But how do I move them? So to move them, have your mesh weight on right here on this tab. Just click on weight. Have this one onto pose, and then let's say, for example, I want this chest to move like further. So now I just go to click on, see what this one does, right? Oops. Use control and left click on this, and we'll see if there's any weights on this and what moves, right? So what is moving? You notice this one's moving. Over here are moving already. What you can do is just click on it. Now you can see the weight of the movement, where it's moving towards it. And that's how the animation's going to move from this side. Same with this one. What's this one doing? If I were to move it, you see how the weight is moving it. If I don't like the weight of how it's movement, or I want to add my own, just delete it. Just change your weight to 0. For example, now if I were to go here, what did it do compared to before? We'll find out. Can't really tell, to be honest. It looks like there's more movement on the shoulder. But you mess with those templates, the redder the weight is, the more it moves. It could be good, it could be bad. So depending on your level of your weight makes a huge difference on drawing. And now, for example, I'll show you how to make that static image into animation. So first, I'm going to click on these. I'm going to delete all this. Now, let me see if anything moves. Nothing's moving. Let's say I wanted the shoulders to move. Now, I'm going to click on a little point. I'm going to use G. And then I'm going to move it. Do I want it? You can move it however you want, right? If I were to do something like this, and let's say I liked it, for example, all I have to do is press I and set location, rotations, and scale. And now I have it. So now from 0 to 40, it's going to do something like that. If I were to hit play, it's not going to show because I don't have a point on. Oops. So first thing to do is on frame 1, is to go ahead and press A to select all of these, or click on one, select A, press I, and then location, rotations, and scale, have a set marker. That's what you want for your resting. And then, for example, on 40, I want some movement. I could go ahead and move stuff. Some aren't weighted, so I don't care for the weight on those. But you could change the weight of however you want. And like I said, you just have to go back to here, make sure it's on set to weight, click on one. For example, let's say I want to change this one up more. I could put some type of weight, and now it's shifting, right? So now when I go to the animation, if I were to click this, I'm shifting something. So you just have to play around, whatever you want. For example, if I were to do something like that, if I wanted that type of animation, just click on any one of these, press A again, press I, location and scale, here's at 40, and now it's going to be moving. And then once it gets to 40, it's going to obviously stay to 200 frames. You can end of how much frames you want to whatever frame number, wherever you want to start at, you can start at. And then you can just go ahead and, let's say you want him to rest back to 1, right? So go back to your animations, go to 1. Now click on any of them, press A to select all, press Control or hold Control and press C. And now I could go to 60, for example, press Control V, since all of them are already selected, press I again, location, rotations, and scale. It's that simple. There we go. Now he's pulsing. But you can mess around with the animations and whatnot, or you could use the same animations, tweak mine, make it better, optimize, make it better. It doesn't matter. However you see how you want to create your creatures, your species. It's that simple with Blender. Blender is free. I recommend using it. I'll give you 2 of my Blender files for male and female. That goes to like 200 frames. Does something like this. For male, same thing. Just go to pose mode. You can see the animations once you click on any of them, where you want to change. It takes a little while to get adjusted with Blender. But just know that, numpad 1 keeps it centered this way. Use shift and the scroll, like press down as your mouse button 3. Press down on that scrolling button just to go like this. If you want to change your angle and see how the animation is, let go of your shift and then use your scroll button, just press down on it. Now if I want to zoom out and whatnot, use the scroll up and down. If I want to get it back flush and stuff, press numpad 1, and then here we are. It's that simple with Blender. You can make your own animations, do whatever pulsing, whatnot. I only have one, you only use one animation style anyways, so makes sense. There's multiple mesh files, like with different meshing that have like clothes and whatnot. You don't have to worry about anything really if you're just using my same animation, my mesh. You could use this. If you don't like where the eyes are, for example, you could go to edit mode. You don't like where the eyes are setting, go ahead and move it. You can move this. Move her wherever you want, but once you know that, let's say if I move it right here, see my character face somewhere over here, let's just say. Now we have to go to pose mode. Make sure your mesh is into weight, and then we click on one of these, right? Click on control, left click, make sure you're just having one on. And then if I were to move this, I want maybe like this much or something. You just gotta fiddle around till you get your animations. So if I were to move this one, it moves kind of like this. Or for example, over here, I want my face to move downwards. This is why weight is very important to get your animations, and it will get, if your face is example like right over here, then you could do that. Just know that edit mode, you could change where everything is. Just make sure you delete your old weights just by like control left clicking, removing this, changing this to 0, remove, and whatnot. Then you could fiddle around. Just know that edit mode, you could change where any of these are, and it's that simple. Like for example, if I were to hit play now, it still will show right here that it's doing that, just for the fact that they're still tied to those weights. But now they're right here. So it's however you want, it's just easier, however you want to fiddle around. That's really it. That's how you create a species, animate, or use static. You could use the static one from human folder 2, reverse engineer, and mess around. Thank you.